If you ever thought to yourself, I really wish that Battletech was more like the MechWarrior video games, well, the new Mercenaries expansion, it has at least a partial answer for you. Now I've got a simple scenario set up here to kind of demonstrate some of the broad principles of the new Battlefield support rules found here in the Mercenaries expansion. And let's dive right in with one of the biggest ones, which involves the initiative order of things. When players have both vehicles and mechs in the field, every player is going to move all of their vehicles before any player goes ahead and moves a single battle mech. Now, moving vehicles is pretty similar to moving battle mechs, except that given the vehicle type in terms of its locomotion, whether it's tracked, wheeled, hover, etc., it's going to have restrictions and changes to how it interacts with the various terrain features on the map. When it comes to mechs attacking vehicles, much of it is identical to mech-on-mech combat. The primary difference applies to calculating the defensive modifier for the target vehicle. Instead of looking at how many hexes it's moved and figuring it out that way, every vehicle has a standard target movement modifier that is almost always applied to it, pretty much identical to how Alpha Strike works. In this case, the Galleon has a target movement modifier of +2, so if I'm doing my math right, the two ER large lasers and the Phoenix Hawk each need to roll 11 to hit. That would actually be a hit, 11. Second one is a miss. Of course, vehicles have their own quirks when it comes to making attacks under these rules. Primarily, the movement modifier for the attacking vehicle has already been factored into the skill of the vehicle because the assumption is the vehicles are moving around at full speed, so you don't apply that twice. Also, most vehicles, not all of them, but most vehicles have a turret and can attack 360 degrees. And finally, vehicles only have a single weapon system, and the range, damage, and such for that weapon system are found on their card. Now in this case, the Galleon has a range of 9 for its long range, so it can potentially engage either of those mechs, but doing the math, it's like a 13 or 14, so the attack will not hit. The Galleon light tank took an ER large laser hit, will mark 8 points of damage next to the card. This damage is sort of temporary, and we'll explain what happens to it at the end of the turn, which, given the fact that the Star Slayer can't fire because there's too much light woods in between the Galleon tank and the mech, we'll figure that out right now. At the end of the turn, if any vehicle took more damage than its threshold value, which in this case is 5 for the Galleon, it needs to make a destruction check. So 2d6 are rolled, and if the total of those dice meets or exceeds the check value, which in this case is 7, the vehicle is destroyed. Now, if you pump a bunch of damage into the tank during the turn, there's going to be modifiers that get added to this check roll to make the destruction easier. And I rolled an 8, which will result in a destruction of the Galleon light tank. That's a basic first turn of the Battlefield support rules. And you got to get an idea what's going on there, but there's definitely some more interesting details to these rules. So let me run through a few more turns of my scenario and show you when those kind of things come up. While there were a lot of high to hit rolls, meaning lots of misses when it came to the mechs versus vehicles, the vehicle side did throw down a light airstrike against my Star Slayer. So I'm going to resolve that now. And how that works, I roll 2d6. If I meet or exceed the number right up here, I apply the damage as described right here in the card. Now, if this was a two-player game where both sides had vehicles, there are defensive air cards that can be played to potentially nullify these incoming airstrikes. Well, an 11 is greater than a 5, so my Star Slayer in this case is going to take 2 groups of damage, 5 points of damage each. Now it's time for some jump jets to the Star Slayer. Why? Because a light airstrike came down, rolled floating critical, rolled a left leg, and blew out 2 leg actuators. It might be almost point blank, but thanks to jumping, the Star Slayer needs 9 to hit with its weapons. Large laser, hit. Medium laser, miss. SRM4, miss. 10 for the large laser, miss. 8 for medium pulse lasers. 1 hit, miss. That's a hit. All right, the Maxim just scored a hit on the Phoenix Hawk, and when vehicles attack, they fire all their weapons, and they either do all their damage or no damage. In this case, I have 4 groups of 5 damage to assign to the Phoenix Hawk. Well, it seems these Battletech laser-etched dice, they have a bit of a knack for rolling floating criticals. 2 jump jets are now taking off the Phoenix Hawk. However, both these 2 vehicles pass our threshold for destruction, so let's see what happens. I need to roll 7s. Galleon first. It survives. Maxim, it is destroyed. Now, in the case of the Galleon, because it survived, all the damage goes away, but that value that I need to check for next time it's ready to be destroyed goes down by 1. For sake of a demonstration, let's pretend my Phoenix Hawk just walked onto this minefield right here. Now, just like an airstrike, it has a target and damage value, so I'm going to make it a hit roll. I need a 9 in this case. And I rolled an 8, so I failed. Now, where this is different than the airstrike is basically my Phoenix Hawk didn't trigger the minefield. It's going to remain in the hex that he's in case somebody else walks into it later. Large laser is a miss. Medium laser is a hit. Medium laser is a miss. SRM4 is also a miss. ER large laser, miss. Medium pulse laser, miss. Medium pulse laser, also a miss. Well, that was a lot of shooting and also a lot of missing, but the Galleon did take 5 points of damage, so I gotta go ahead and see if it's destroyed. Now in its degraded state, my check is only 6 instead of 7. And in this case, I rolled a 10, kaboom, he blows up and he's dead. Another minefield, but this time for the Star Slayer. That would be a 9. So the one thing of note when it comes to the minefields is the damage against mechs goes straight to the legs. Then I've got some sniper artillery coming down on my mechs. Now, at the start of the game, it's possible the player could have pre-chosen several hexes that this artillery is located on or targeted on, and if it's one of those hexes being hit, it's an automatic hit. So you basically got some pre-planned artillery. However, in a dynamic environment like this, what has to happen is that the attacker is going to secretly choose a hex somewhere where they think an enemy is going to be, and then next turn we're going to resolve this actual attack. It might need boxcars, but an Ultra Auto Cannon 20 can possibly ruin the Phoenix Hawk's day. And that's a miss. Two ER large laser hits against the Auto Cannon 20 guy. Torso twist and fire. Miss. Miss. So the Hetzer wheeled assault gun here is taking 16 damage this turn, which blows past its threshold of 5. But what's new at this point is now when you start getting into multiples of 10 damage, in this case I'm between 11 and 16 points of damage, I get to add a +1 to my destroy check to see if my dice roll equals or exceeds the check value of the vehicle. In this case, I rolled a 5. 5 plus 1 is 6. 6 is still less than 8, so the vehicle is not destroyed. As the Vedite moves right here, that minefield can go off on your own units, so he's got to be a little careful. The Hetzer is one of the vehicles that does not have a turret, so it's got to use a little bit more thought as it moves along at this point to make sure it can still engage the mechs. And yes, I intentionally walked onto the artillery target hex. It's a demonstration game, guys. 7. That's a miss. Pulse lasers only need 5s. 1 hit. 2 hit. Hetzer's got one more chance to ruin the day of the Phoenix Hawk. Oh, it's a miss. Whew, that was close. Upon further review, I went back and looked at previous clips. The Phoenix Hawk only moved 4 hexes, so that is actually a 30-point damage hit to the Phoenix Hawk. Well, hopefully that ER large laser and medium pulse laser in the right arm weren't important, as well as the right torso armor wasn't important either. All right, 2 more new things here. First is the artillery strike is coming down, and yes, the Phoenix Hawk walked into the hex that was secretly marked. I'm demonstrating things. So in this case, I got to roll a target of 8 for the artillery strike. If it hits and does damage. If it misses, it drifts somewhere. That would be a 7. Now, because I missed by 1, the attack is going to scatter 1 hex in a d6 direction. And it is going in direction number 3, which is back right here. So it's still going to hit, and area of effect damage is going to hit the Phoenix Hawk. A heavy bombing run is coming in against the Star Slayer. It's kind of like artillery, but there's no delay involved. And that is a dead-on hit for a crap ton of damage. That is 11. If the game were to go one more turn, my mechs would walk off the table, so let's call this scenario done at this point. Hopefully that gives you a basic overview of the new Battlefield support rules in Battletech Mercenaries. Of course, there's more details in here, so consult the full rules for all those details. I think my one issue I have with this system comes in how vehicles do damage. Granted, my mechs took a fair bit of damage, but most of it came from these Battlefield support cards like aerospace fighters, artillery, and things like that. Other than the Hetzer, which had that one massive 30-point damage attack on my Phoenix Hawk, which blew off an arm and a torso, they didn't really do a whole lot. And that's kind of a combination of the fact that they're always moving at a flank speed. They have basically a single attack, which is all damage or no damage. And they tend to be rolling fairly high, numbers to hit your targets. Problem I just have is a general rule with tabletop game design is when it comes to like one die roll for lots of damage or no damage, I've never been a big fan of that, whether it be MechWarrior Dark Age or Battletech Alpha Strike, which Alpha Strike has ways to make it a little more interesting that other games like this version right here don't. I would probably look into changing that if I were to use these things in an actual game. Maybe it's a case of you roll one set of attack die for each damage group the vehicle has, and therefore you get some attacks that hit, or some damage groups that hit, some that miss. Of course, then you have vehicles like the Hetzer, which is designed to be a high risk, mega high reward. Because right now the way that it sits, I kind of feel it's more of like a high risk, meh reward for vehicles. But They do blow up easily. You fire a few shots at them, and they often blow up. And like I said, way back at the start, it's kind of like playing the Mech Warrior video game. If you like that, awesome. If not, well, you can find the full rules for vehicles in the Battletech Total Warfare Rulebook, which is, of course, separate from all these box sets. All right, well, thank you guys all for watching. I'm Jason, the creator of the Tabletop Battlefield. I'll see you next time.